Ethan was only 10 years old when his life began to change. After losing his mother to illness, his father remarried a woman who seemed kind at first glance. She smiled in public, spoke gently before neighbors, and presented herself as the perfect stepmother. Yet behind the walls of their quiet suburban house, that smile turned into a mask, a disguise for cruelty that few could imagine. While his father worked long shifts at a nearby factory, the stepmother ruled the home like a tyrant. She would deny him meals, lock him in his room, and whisper cruel words that pierced deeper than any slap ever could. She called him useless, unwanted, and cursed his very existence. What should have been moments of comfort became hours of punishment, a punishment for simply existing. Ethan's once bright eyes grew hollow. He began to fear footsteps in the hallway, the creak of a door, or the sound of his name. He would retreat into corners, hiding his small frame under a thin blanket, clutching a worn-out toy that once belonged to his mother. But what made this story unbearable wasn't just the abuse itself, it was the silence. Neighbors suspected something. They saw the bruises, the thin body, the eyes that never met theirs. Yet no one spoke, no one intervened. Fear and indifference often build walls stronger than any prison. And so, in that lonely house, behind those closed doors, a child was being broken, piece by piece, until hope seemed to disappear entirely. One cold afternoon, as the sky turned gray and the wind carried the smell of rain, something remarkable happened. A stray German shepherd appeared at the edge of the property. His fur was rough, his ribs slightly visible, yet his eyes, sharp and golden, carried both wisdom and warmth. Ethan first saw him through the small gap in his window. The dog stood quietly in the yard, watching the boy as if he could sense the fear behind the glass. For reasons unknown, Ethan felt an instant connection, perhaps because both of them were wounded souls searching for care. The next morning, when his stepmother threw leftovers into the yard, Ethan saw the dog again. Quietly, when she wasn't looking, he slipped a piece of bread through the fence. The German shepherd wagged his tail but didn't bark. Day after day, the boy and the dog formed a silent friendship, one built on trust and shared pain. One evening, the stepmother's rage reached a terrible peak. After accusing Ethan of breaking a glass, she struck him hard and locked him outside in the cold night. Barefoot and trembling, Ethan huddled near the back porch, tears streaming down his face. That's when the German shepherd appeared once more, stepping out from the shadows like a guardian angel. The dog lay beside him, offering warmth and comfort with nothing more than quiet presence. For the first time in years, Ethan felt safe. He whispered to the dog, calling him Shadow, because that's what the dog had become. His shadow, his unseen protector, his only friend in a world that had turned its back on him. But that night would not end in silence. As the stepmother shouted from inside, Shadow's ears perked. He sensed danger, growled softly, and when she opened the back door to drag Ethan inside, Shadow lunged between them, baring his teeth with a ferocity born from loyalty, not violence. The stepmother screamed and slammed the door shut. Shadow stood guard all night. And when dawn broke, something within Ethan changed. He realized that love, even from a wounded stray, could be powerful enough to save. He no longer felt invisible. Days turned into weeks, and the stepmother's anger only grew worse. She despised the dog and the defiance she saw in Ethan's eyes, that small glimmer of hope she could not extinguish. One morning, she called animal control, claiming there was a dangerous stray near her property. When the truck came, Ethan cried out and begged them not to take Shadow away. But the officers, following orders, drove off with his only friend. That night, the house was quiet, too quiet, and perhaps fate has a way of listening when the innocent suffer. The following evening, neighbors reported screams, louder and more desperate than ever before. What they didn't know was that Shadow had escaped from the animal shelter. Guided by instinct and loyalty, he ran through the night, returning to the house where Ethan was trapped once again in the dark. Inside, the stepmother's cruelty had reached its peak. She struck Ethan repeatedly, furious over a broken plate, her rage uncontrollable. But before she could harm him again, the sound of shattering glass echoed. Shadow had broken through the window. Barking fiercely, he charged forward, placing himself between Ethan and his abuser. The stepmother, terrified, stumbled backward. Neighbors, alarmed by the noise, finally called 911. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights illuminated the street. The U.S. police officers arrived, bursting through the door to find a terrified boy, a trembling stepmother, and a German shepherd standing protectively over the child. It was a scene they would never forget. The officers carefully approached, speaking softly to calm the dog, who refused to leave Ethan's side. One of them, Officer Daniels, a veteran with years of experience, knelt down and extended his hand. Shadow sniffed, then gently allowed the officer to pet him. It was as if the dog understood. The nightmare was over. When the stepmother tried to speak, the officers quickly saw through her lies. The bruises on Ethan's arms, the marks on his back, the fear in his voice, they told the truth no words could hide. She was arrested that night, charged with severe child abuse. As Ethan was wrapped in a warm blanket and carried to safety, Shadow followed close behind, never once letting the boy out of sight. For the first time, Ethan looked up at the police officers and whispered, "Thank you for hearing me, even when I couldn't." Ladies and gentlemen, rescue is not the end of the story, it is only the beginning. Ethan was taken into protective custody, placed in the care of a kind foster family who worked closely with the local authorities. Shadow, recognized as a hero, was officially adopted by the same family, ensuring that the boy and his loyal friend would never be separated again. At first, healing was not easy. Ethan had to learn to trust again, to sleep without fear, to eat without guilt, to smile without shame. The nightmares continued, but Shadow was always there, resting his head on Ethan's bed, reminding him that love still existed in the world. The U.S. police officers visited often, checking in on his progress. Officer Daniels, especially, became a mentor figure, teaching Ethan about courage, compassion, and justice. He reminded the boy that bravery isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to stand up despite it. Years later, Ethan grew into a young man dedicated to helping others. He studied criminal justice, inspired by the officers who once rescued him, and by the dog who taught him loyalty and unconditional love. When he graduated, he stood on stage, delivering a speech that echoed through every heart present. Greater than, when the world turned away, a dog stood by my side. When I was voiceless, the police gave me my voice back. And when I thought love was gone, kindness proved me wrong. Ethan's story spread across the country, inspiring laws that strengthened child protection services and promoted cooperation between police and animal rescue units. Shadow, now old and gray, remained by his side, a living symbol of survival and faith. And as I stand before you today, recounting this true story of pain, courage, and redemption, I want us to remember one thing. There are children in our neighborhoods, schools, and communities who live behind closed doors of silence. Their bruises may be hidden, but their hearts cry out for help. We, as a society, must never turn away from that cry. If a stray dog could sense suffering and act with courage, how much more can we, as human beings, do with our hearts, our voices, and our actions? So, let us be the shadow for someone in need, the protector, the listener, the one who stands between pain and safety. Because every act of compassion, no matter how small, has the power to rewrite someone's life story.